Well, good morning. How's everybody doing? Uh, Thanks for the Tamarisk Coalition. Thank you guys for letting me be a last second entry into the conference with a cancellation. I'm uh, I'm honored to be able to speak to you guys today. We have a tools and techniques talk mixed in with partnerships in community, and that's okay, I think, because if you choose to use any of these tools or are using these sorts of things on your projects, you know we can't go about it alone. We got to do it with the help of our friends. Um, and so building these partnerships and doing these projects um, collectively is the only way to do it. I've been working for the BLM in Grand Junction now for 23 years. I'm a weed management specialist there, and I spend a lot of time on our river systems. And we have the Colorado, the Gunnison, and the Dolores rivers that flow through our field office. And the reason that I spend a lot of time on those rivers is because, as you're well aware, across the West, a lot of our riparian systems are pretty sick from an invasive species standpoint. So ours are no exception to that. So I've spent a lot of time on the rivers. The other thing in spending that time, I've subtitled my talk to make life easier. You may get a flavor as I go through my presentation that I like to tinker with things. I like to try new things. I like to experiment. I like to build things. Certainly not everything that I'll show you is something we built or tried. They're available anywhere or everywhere. But my goal is to show you some things that might pique your interest. And if you would like to talk in more detail about them afterwards, I'll be here all week, and we can talk about these things. So here we go. This is the old days for us on the Colorado River. Maybe you've been there or you're doing this now. When we wanted to treat weeds along the river, which is only accessible by boat, we would steal a fire pump from the fire shop, some hose in one of their big tanks, and we'd go down about a day ahead of time, and we would fill that big tank up with water and let the sediment settle to the bottom, and then we would use our backpack sprayers and buckets to spray, for us, primarily Russian knapweed along the Colorado River. And it worked just fine. But for example, this patch of weeds that's along the river was about 10 acres in size. And I think I figured that we put about 300 backpack sprayer loads on that patch of knapweed. And after a few days of that, and the number of volunteers diminishing to help us out do that, we said, it's just the fun factor is not there. So we said there's got to be a better way. So we said, let's build a boat that we can spray weeds with. And we got a grant from the governor's office in Colorado to help pay for it. And about $20,000 later, we came up with this particular tool. This was in 2005. Maybe you may have seen this on the River Management Society website. They've done some stuff on this boat. But we put it together, and myself from the weed spraying perspective, and then our river ranger from the boating perspective, put our heads together to come up with a way that we could build something that we could spray weeds off of. If you look closely at these reels, there's a lot more of these now in the country. They come out of Australia, but if you look closely, you see an antenna off the top of the reel. The neat thing about this boat is the applicator's at the end of the hose, and they can push a button on their belt, and it'll wind them back to the boat. So you don't need anybody to tend hose. You don't need somebody on the boat when you're actually spraying. We took a standard whitewater raft and frame, and once we got that, we totally destroyed it and made it into a weed sprayer. The guts of that are right in the center of the boat, and we have a 35-gallon tank that sets in a 75-gallon tub in the middle of the boat, And within that tub, we have our pumps, we have all our valves, filters. The system is powered by a marine deep cycle battery, all of our wiring. We put our product in that tank or in that tub. So if we sprung a leak, it would stay within the tub and not go into the river. Down here in this part of the photo, we have a couple of freshwater tanks on the boat for small projects, but if we're going to do something big, we needed a way to draft out of the river, so we built a little electric pump to do that and run it through several filters to get most of the muck out of the river, and we could spray big acreages with it that way. We had the help of a gentleman who could weld aluminum, and once we had that part done, then we just took it to my house and we plumbed it and wired it and got it ready to go. An upgrade to the boat last year is where the arrow's pointing there, that particular hose reel. The blue reels hold 150 feet of hose, and so you can reach out that far from the boat. The good news is over the course of the years on the Colorado especially, we've reached that 150-foot limit on a lot of the weeds from the edge of the river, so we needed to reach out a little farther. So we added that reel, which has 450 feet of hose on it, and that allows us to get out there and spray vast oceans of Russian knapweed that are growing quite a ways from the river. And it's been a real blessing to do that because, like I say, we were able to get some big areas done in fairly short order. That's no fun. I've already said that, but maybe the weed boat isn't. Maybe you don't have a place you can float a boat. On the Dolores River, where we're at, we don't have very limited opportunities to put the weed raft on the boat because it's tough to get in and out of the water. It's pretty heavy, and I'm not that good a boatman. And the Dolores is a lot smaller river. It's full of rocks, et cetera, et cetera. But there were a lot of places along the Dolores where I did not want to do this. Again, I hate carrying backpack sprayers, so maybe there was another idea that we could do. Why not put my ATV on a raft and float it across the river, and I don't have to carry the backpack sprayer. It's a little spooky to drive it on the boat. You don't want to overshoot it, but it works really well, and we've done this quite a bit on the Colorado River. I get a lot of folks, especially those that are involved in the safety program, question me about this. But it's a little harder to see where you're going, but you tie it down. The weight of that thing is no more than about 3.5 fat guys in the boat, and it worked just fine. And what we've done is spray weeds, and we've seeded fires along the river. The last one we did, a 90-acre fire that they wanted us to seed with hand seeders, and that's a big chunk of ground to do with a hand seeder. So we talked them into this, and we did it in a day with our ATV. How about some planting tools? In various places on our systems, we want to put cottonwoods back in the system. This is not something I invented, obviously. It's a small excavator with a stinger on the end of it instead of a bucket. And the operator that's in the room today, and he does a great job. You shove that stinger in the ground and you kind of wallow the hole out, and that prepares a place to plant these dormant cottonwood trees that have either been grown on the farm or that we harvested locally. And it's a great tool, very effective way of planting dormant poles. That highly technical piece of rod that I'm holding in my hand there is a $3 piece of conduit from Home Depot. And if you look real close, you can see graduation marks on there with a Sharpie. It's just graduated in feet because what we would do when we'd poke the hole in the ground is we wanted to measure how far down the water table was and record that. And then when we shove that pole down the hole, we want to make sure it reaches the water. So we could use that rod to help us do that correctly. At the end of the rod, again, this is another highly technical tool. It's the quarter cup, measuring cup I stole from my wife's set in the kitchen and bolted it to the bottom of the rod. And what that allowed us to do is to sample the soil at different depths in the hole and check it for salinity to see if that particular spot was going to support cottonwoods. So if we would sample it, and if it's too salty, you just move the machine around until you find one that's okay. So that's what we did with that. This is also something that I learned from the Los Lunas Plant Center, which I believe is in the neighborhood, for planting dormant willows along the river. The basic components are right here. You've got the generator to supply electricity, a long extension cord. This is a hammer drill and a masonry bit. Those are the basic components. And then the all-important ground fault circuit interrupter in case you fall in the river holding an electric drill in your hand. This is the one that we use. We needed a little bit bigger drill for what we were going to do, and we built this bit. We just went down and we purchased a masonry bit, inch in diameter, welded it to a steel rod, and then in order to get it to fit on the drill, what I did, I would just go down and buy a cold chisel and cut the chisel part off, and it's kind of octagonal, weld that to the end of the rod, and it fits into the drill. And really effective and good way of planting hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of willows, thousands of willows, drill them in and shove them down the hole, and it works great. Maybe you want to throw some grass seed out in your project, and you need to scratch the ground up, prepare the seed bed a little bit. Again, these you can find at about any farm implement dealer. It's just a little disc that you can tow behind your ATV. You can adjust the depth of the discs by raising or lowering the tires in the center. It's just like the big one, only miniature. And drive it around, scratch up the ground, put your seed out, and then this is a really important component of that, just a little cultipacker wheel to help cover that seed. You can see that site pretty easy, pretty wide open, pretty flat, all et cetera, but you can really sneak that little disc and that cultipacker around in small, hard to get areas. And and as you know, if you can incorporate that seed, the better chance you have of it working. For both of those, this one you just flip it over and you drive it down the road, and likewise you lower the wheels and you can haul the disc around. Watering tools. Sometimes we want to supplementally water what we're putting in the ground, so those are 55-gallon pickle barrels that we bought at the local farm co-op, and we took them down. This is on the Colorado River, and plumbed in a gravity-fed drip system for watering little cottonwood trees. The basic components are, of course, the barrel, a drip filter, and this timer, one like it. There's a lot of them out on the market. It runs off a 9-volt battery. You can program it to turn on whenever you want it to, and stay on or off, time of day, et cetera. Low flow, low PSI. It basically just opens the valve and closes it. And we would water most of our trees, early in the morning before sunrise, and that kind of a thing. And sometimes we buried the line, sometimes we left it on the surface, but we would just plumb it in and water these little trees the hope is that they'll get a start and establish, and we can remove the system from it. They work pretty well. We got get a couple of weeks worth of water out of one of those before you got to refill it. Again, we would just steal a pump from the fire shop and fill them back up. Here's another one that we put together down at my house. Thought, well, maybe there's a way we can set something up that's kind of all independent, takes care of itself. A little remote solar system. The basic components of it are the pump in the river in the bucket. It's got a piece of window screen to filter out the big chunks. Along the line that's going to the watering is a drip filter that you can open when the pump's running that spins the sediment out of it. And then up on the bank is a sealed battery, not a lead acid battery, but a sealed one, and a timer, and a little timer right in a solar panel. I needed to figure out, what that, I had no idea. I mean, not a mathematician. How well will it work? So I simulated a stream bank at the house, up over the hood of my truck, a few ladders in the wood pile to get it off the ground to see what the pump was actually capable of producing. And in the end, for that little system, it had a 20-watt panel, the marine battery, the timer. It's a 1.5 really low draw bilge pump for a boat I bought at Walmart. If you plug it in to 12 volts and it just shoots water out of the pump, it's rated at 150 gallons per hour. At 5 feet, which is what I simulated it at, the output was 30 gallons per hour, and that was going through 100 feet of hose, 42 sections of 1/4-inch soaker hose, and it worked great. It cost about $500 to put it together. It's actually, the cost is more than that, because right after I got the thing up and running and tuned up and all that, somebody stole all of it. They left the bucket, but they stole everything else, which is a caution on solar stuff. Solar equipment is a target for thieves. Okay, now we're going to get a little bit lighthearted here. Remember the excavator I showed you? You know, the crews are out working. The conservation corps, they eat a lot of food, so you need to feed them. Fishing tools. There's Stan with his stinger, and you never know what you'll catch in the Dolores River. The 6th graders were talking about whales in the Rio Grande. Well, they're in the Dolores as well. That's all I have. Like I said, I'll be around all week. If you want to talk about any of these things in any more detail, just grab me. Thank you.
Stick around. Thanks so much, Sparky. Does anyone have questions about any of that fancy gear?
Do you have a quick and dirty way of doing a soil test for salinity? Were you using the conductivity?
Yeah, we had a couple of different tools. Is Julie here? Okay, she's next door. We had a couple of probes. You'd stick in the sample and it'd give you the conductivity. That's what we were using. And we actually were doing 2 different things. One of them I wasn't as much a part of, but we had the little 2-pronged probe that we would put in the sample. I believe if it's more than about 4.5 for cottonwoods, we didn't put it in the ground, but up to that we planted it. And we found a lot of variation. It was surprising. You think you're in a good spot and you're not, or vice versa.
Yeah. What area were you able to water with your barrel and drip filter system?
What area?
Yeah, like what size?
We would put 3 to 4 little trees on one barrel, and wrapped around the base of the tree were 3 emitters around each tree. And we would set it to go off, early when it was cool, and then shut off during the day. The other thing you didn't see in there, near those barrels, which were typically near campsites, we had posts with buckets, and sometimes campers would come down and fill the barrels back up with us with buckets, and we wouldn't have to do it as often.